Hi everyone, and welcome back. I thought that right now was probably a good time to do a little talking about what I'm doing, since I chose not to on the first two videos. Obviously, this is the fairy house. This is not the one we're making, but we're making one that's going to be very similar to this. So what I've done is I have now painted everything black, and I chose to put a little window up here in the top, and I think you can see it there. When I did that, I had originally used a ball of newspaper in there, and then I put foil on top and then wrapped the whole thing. Well, when I cut this out, in case you do the same thing, you're going to need to pick and pull some of that newspaper out, because otherwise it's just going to be in there. And then I stuck a piece of cardboard in there and masking taped over it. Also, when I put the my paper mache on, a lot of people get a dish and they dip the paper towel. They would, do I have a piece? Okay, well this is one I was using for something, but they would take their piece of paper towel, we'll just pretend, and they would have a dish, and the dish would be full of the glue water mix, and then they would put the paper towel in it to soak it all the way through, and then they just take their fingers and wipe it out like that. I didn't do it that way. I did it a different way, and at first it doesn't give you as hard of a paper mache. So what you would do if you were doing that was the same thing. You put it down and then you just kind of bunch it, with your brush or whatever you use, and you bunch it up so that you get your texture of your bark in it. I was doing it where I just basically dipped into the glue with my brush, put it on, stuck the paper towel over it, and then worked it with my fingers, adding the glue and water to it, and then shaping it some more. You get very sticky fingers, you get a lot of glue on them. But I almost prefer this way, because then I can really shape it and I can really move it. So that's just a couple of things. You wouldn't necessarily, unless you're doing a tree stump house, you could at any time have just covered it with clay, cut out your doors and windows, and went from there. My roof, this one, is going to be identical to the one I did here, which is a lot of little cardboard strips to cut, but it's worth it. It's so worth it, because it's just so cute when you get it done. This one I put a mushroom on top of. I'm not sure I'm going to do that with the one we're making together, and I did use a mushroom for the chimney, which I am not going to do on this house. This is a much bigger jar, as you can see the two there, kind of a size comparison. So I am going to be using a cardboard chimney that's just pieces of cardboard glued together in a chimney shape, and then it's going to go onto my roof wherever I choose to put it, like that, and then I'll shingle around it with my little pieces of cardboard. I mean, there are multiple ways you can do this. My way isn't right, it isn't wrong, it's my way. And so I want you to keep that in mind as you're constructing your house, and when you're doing your little landscape around it and everything. There are many different ways in which you can do this, and I urge each of you to get creative, do your own thing, make it yours. I am just merely offering the ideas. As I said, my bark was inspired by Sharon Oyala. I hope I said her name right. She has a wonderful channel on here called Where the Gnomes Live. And that is definitely a channel worth checking out. And I thank Sharon for the wonderful idea on the bark. So I'm going to set this little guy aside, and I'm going to go through my painting and explain the paints I'm using a little bit, and then I'm going to get to the painting part. Also, when I painted the whole thing black, I used a very stiff, very old brush. I found that the stiffness helped me get the brush down into the little grooves. And there are some spots that some white does still show through. But by the time we're done, if there's any at all, it's going to be amazing. I painted it black because I want the deepest, darkest crevices in this to be black, so that it gives that depth to the bark of the tree. I happen to like that. I like to layer my colors. I like to start with the darkest color, layer to the lightest that I'm going to use. That's just my preference. If you want to skip the black, you want to go right to some brown or whatever you want to do, you know, feel free. Because there's no right, no wrong. This is your idea. This is a fairy house or gnome home, and who knows? They can be anything, right? One more word before I just be silent and start my painting. I will break in with talk if I feel I need to explain something. Glue guns are very nasty. I set my arm down on the glue gun yesterday. It's a good thing the video wasn't, there was, you know, no audio because that hurt. And it wasn't pleasant, and neither was what I said. So I'm going to start with my darkest color. I know a lot of artists use burnt umber. I happen to have this color called Chocolate Bar, and I don't even know if you can get some of these colors anymore because a lot of my colors are very, very old. Bought years and years ago, and I'm trying to get them used up. So I'm going to start with a color called Chocolate Bar. I don't know if you can see that. But that's what I'm starting with. You, like I said, feel free to do your own thing. This is a very runny paint. It's very runny, so it, yeah, just runs all over. I'm going to take a brush about this big because I don't want too big of a brush because I like to have a little bit of control. What I'm aiming for is I want to brush on the brown paint, but I don't want it down into all these little cracks, and I will show you what I mean. And it's going to fill some of them, but it's not going to fill all of them. And that's fine. See, like right in here, even though I've kind of brushed over it, oops, sorry, I've got no brown. And that's what I'm going for with this. I don't want brown paint in every crack. And later on we'll get closer and closer to dry brushing instead of actually painting as we build up our layers. And this is a very reddish brown. I happen to like it. I happen to think it adds some really unique and neat colors to the bark as it progresses. I kind of just let the paints go up on, I just kind of go to the top, and whatever gets brown, and whatever doesn't, doesn't. And I like it that way. Sometimes I take a little paint off my brush because I don't want a lot of the paint, but yet again I realize that most of it's going to get covered over with the next color and the next coat, and that's okay because that's what I want. So I'm all about building up my layers of color. And as you can see, I've got some brown right there, or some white. I'll just stick the brush in there, and that is obviously too deep or something I can't get. And you know, you can go across also. You don't have to brush up and down going with the way that you've laid your paper, your paper towel. You can go across, which leaves even more of that black exposed, almost more like a dry brushing technique with a very wet brush. Am I getting this on there? I realize my hand's in the way and I'm sorry. As you go, just decide where do you want that paint, where don't you want it, and then just kind of angle your brush or go across or, you know, up and down, whatever it's going to take to fill in those spots you want filled in, and leave the rest. I know I haven't done the window trim yet, and you can sure do it at this, you know, even before you paint it black if you want, you know, like put in your trim around your windows, put your windows in. I prefer to do it this way because mine is probably going to be done with air dry clay. You can also use aluminum foil and then clay over the top. There's so many ways you can do this. And each one comes out a little different from the one before, not only in the way that your paper towels lay when you put them on here, but the painting itself just, you know, every one of them is different. Every time, even though you do the same thing, it's going to come out a little bit different. Way too much paint. And you know, the little house that I used, the one I just showed you that's finished, I made a mistake. I Mod Podged before my paint obviously was completely dried, and I lost all of the detail I put into it. So I repainted that one black and started over. So if you don't like your results, that is an option, to start all over, paint it black, go from there. I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I'm like, well, you know what? I can start over, and I did. And I think it almost turned out better that time. I waited till a couple days before I Mod Podged, make sure everything was fully dry. Okay. Now I think this looks fine, like this. I'm going to hold it up close. I don't know if you can see it. I've got some kind of bad lighting going in here. But see how, if you can see how that brown, and then you have the black areas in there? Well, wait till we put on the next color. And I am going to, just for a second here, see if I can get a little bit of this paint up. This is very, very runny. And I'm going to see if I can put a little bit back in the bottle because I don't like to waste. So bear with me a couple seconds here and I'll see what I can do. Don't think we'll be able to save all that, but we saved some. Okay, now I, as a rule, don't always wait till my paint dries all the way because I think the blending of the colors looks really neat. Please, by all means, if you want to let yours dry in between, you go right ahead. The next color I'm going to be using is kind of a medium brown. It's called Nutmeg Brown, and this one is really old. I don't know if this is even a color anymore. Oh, top's all... There we go. Okay. And I'm not going to want as much of this. Oh, come out. It is so old. Come on, come on. The top of it's all messed up. So, ouch, we'll go with plan B if that fails. Okay, so this time I'm just going to kind of blot my brush off a little more because I don't want a heavy coat of paint on it. I want to just kind of swipe over the top of what I've already done. This may be too wet. You can usually tell by how your paint is flowing over the top and the colors you're getting out of it. I'm going to let it go here and see what happens. Yeah, I think my paint might be just a bit too wet. So while I'm waiting for it to dry just a little longer, let's take a look. I spent a lot of time cutting out just little pieces of cardboard, different shapes. I mean, they don't all have to be the same exact width, shape, anything like that. They're just made to imitate shingle, you know, some sort of wood shingle, and then we'll be placing them on the roof. So that is something that, you know, you may want to get started on because it's not fun by a long shot. Let's see what we can do. I don't know, this light tonight for some reason seems really yellow to me, so it looks like I'm getting orange and not brown for my color. This is a thicker paint, so I want to be careful how I use it. Just dip into the lid there, because this paint is very old, it's getting very thick. Another good reason to use it up, right? Not waste it, get rid of it. Use it in the project. My tree is starting to take on some colors, different shades, different highlights, and that's what we want. Now, normally, let this dry a little more. I do not have my heat gun and I don't want to risk loosening my glue any because it's just hot glued. This is what it's starting to look like. You see that where you're getting the shaded areas and the darker and lighter browns together? Okay, so now what I use, the next color I use, this is a Granite Gray. Now I'm not going to be using a lot of this. This is going to be put on very sparingly, kind of like a dry brush. I don't want a lot because I'm not going to use a lot. I haven't cleaned my brush, and that's fine with me. I'm good with that. If you want to clean your brush in between, you go right ahead. It's up to you. But what I'm doing is I'm pouncing a lot of this paint off this brush because I want to just hit just small areas with highlight. Too much, in my opinion, is a bad thing. Although it's going to get covered up anyway. I think if I remember right, on the other tree I did the gray and then I felt like it was too much, so I went back over it with the Nutmeg Brown, which just kind of helped to blend out things better. See right there, that's way too much gray. Unless you're doing a really dead tree stump where they get gray from weather, where the tree has just been out like forever in the real weather, then you might want more gray. The idea is to leave some signs of each color you put on, but never so much that it all looks like it's just one color. At least that's what I'm going for. And I can see right now there are a lot of spots where I've got way too much gray. Sometimes I do several coats just because I like one part of something, but I'm not too crazy about another part. So I just keep going back and forth with my paints until I get something that I'm really happy with. And this is way too much gray, but that's okay. It gives me more to pick and choose what I want to be gray, or where I want the gray to show up and where I don't. So we're just going to put it on good. You see, I don't know, I hope the color comes out, but see where I've just lightly brushed some gray over this real black area? Kind of looks like when trees start to get old and weathered. It's definitely going to be too much gray, but that's alright. We'll fix that up when I get done putting it on. And the cool part is, no two trees are alike. Nature isn't perfect, and neither are we. And that's the beauty of it all. We don't worry about being perfect. Okay. Alright, so I have way too much gray on here, so I'm going to add some more of this nutmeg color. But I'm going to leave some of the gray show through. And this is where we really start to get our colors. We really start to get the bark effect. Now this time, I'm not going to put this brown on near as heavy either, because basically what I'm trying to do, taking very light swipes, is want to hide some of that gray, and I want to leave some of it show. Like right here is a big bunch of gray, and I don't want that much gray. I personally don't. You might like it. Me, I don't want that much gray. Not concentrated in one spot. That doesn't look natural to me. And I'm going to try to stay in one area. Now I've got some spots where you can see white showing through. I am not worried about that at all, because once I get done decorating, when our tree is all done, I'm not going to notice. They'll be covered up and you won't even see them. Another spot up here, right up here at the top where I feel I have too much gray. And it's okay if you wipe out too much of the gray, just go back with a really, really light dry brush, put it back in. Put it back in where you think you want it, or you think it needs it, or you think you took out too much. Down here on the bottom, I got way too much gray. So I'm going to a little more brown down here and get rid of it. Get rid of most of it. I don't want it all gone. I don't want it all to stay. You know, I could sit here and just do this all day long, just keep adjusting my colors. It's fun. There's something very enjoyable about it. And it's because you can see, you can see your progress you're making, and you can see, what's coming out of your efforts. And at that point, you can sit here and just do this and adjust whatever you don't like. And you can just keep doing it till you get that exact right look that makes you happy. To me, there's just something so satisfying about sitting here doing this and going and just seeing it all just come to life, just like all these layers of paint shaping up to something that hopefully turns out wonderful, gives you just that look you want. There's one piece here that didn't lay down right, but it kind of looks like when bark gets loose and is kind of peeling away from the tree. That's kind of neat. I've never had that happen before, but I like it. Okay, I hope this video is picking up these colors, because right now it's just kind of amazing looking. I think I might have a little too much dark in this one. And then again, I don't know. So that'll be something that once it's really good and dry, so I see a big spot of too much gray paint right there. That is not a spot I want to be with so much gray. See, the little paint takes care of that. I will see when it's completely dry tomorrow if I want to touch it up, and I will do that off camera, so you won't have to watch. I may, radically change this, but for right now, I'm pretty happy with the colors, the way they're blending. So I'm going to go right now for my last color that I use. And this is a color I am pretty sure they probably don't make. It's called Fawn. And it's not a gold, it's not a brown, it's kind of a, it's a very different sort of color. Ew. Old paint. Oops. Oh, way too much. Okay, this I barely want to put on because it can overpower real quick. So I'm really going to be pouncing that out. It's going to be very lightly. And you may not even be able to see what it's doing on here. And if I get too much, I definitely will be going back with more of the nutmeg, because it's not a color I want a lot of. It's a highlight, and that's all it is. And because it's a highlight, I'm trying to work in only one area, staying like right in this area here first, so that I do not go away and from this, and then I can't tell right now, because my paint is still somewhat wet, and I prefer working that way. A lot of people don't. I do, because it blends the paints, but by all means you paint how you're comfortable. There, I just got way too much of it right there, and it's, although it's not a gold, it's got a lot of gold in it, so it can make or break your project real quick. But that's why the nutmeg is the color that I have the most of on these when I make them. Like I said, you can go all the way back to black and start over if you don't like it. Or back to dark brown if that's what color you chose to start with. I'm definitely probably going to be adding more nutmeg to this, because I'm getting a little more of the fawn on there than I really wanted. Just kind of, just lightly going over the more raised surfaces with this. And I am getting more of this on here than I really wanted. But we'll fix that. You'll never know when I'm done. Okay, I think I am back to where I started. Just a bit of that in there. Or maybe just a bit more of that in there. Let's see what that does. Okay, so I don't know, I'm hoping you can see this. See, now I've got the highlights of the fawn, and in some spots I've got a little too much. I will touch that up after the next color. So the last one, I usually use an antique white, or I mean this might be, yes, it's just antique white. I've got one, it's called Antique Parchment. It's a little darker than this. Actually, I barely want any of this at all, so let's take it right out of the cap. Barely touch my brush on it. Barely. Oh, see, that's too much right there. I've got way too much on. Barely touch and just random little spots. Most of this will never show because I don't care for it. Some people put a lot of white on theirs, and that's fine. It's what they like. Me, I can do without. Because I don't really think it does much for highlighting a tree stump. This is supposed to be a dead tree stump. And I don't see a lot of white on them. So it's lichens. but I do put a little bit on. I don't even know why I put a little bit on. It's not my thing. Because I'm going to go over this in a minute with the nutmeg to get rid of some of that fawn color. Which I do like, by the way, as a highlighter for brown because it has so much gold in it. Although it is not a gold for sure. See, I'm not even really putting this stuff on. There's really no point for me. But this is just a bit too light, so I'm going to go over it with some more of the, oops, not that one, this one. A little more of the nutmeg, thinned out of course, because I don't want a lot of it either. Sorry about that, the rattling. I think the thing is knowing when to stop, and sometimes you just get carried away. So, I'm just basically putting a little bit of brown back into this. Because for me, the fawn head, I used a little too much of it and a little too much of the gold color to it. We'll see when I'm done how this all plays out. And we'll fix it again if we have to. Satisfied, but this time I'm going to let it dry before I make that judgment whether it's right or not, whether I like it or not. Yeah, see, I don't see that white does anything for much of it. Now when I get done, you should be able to see bits of every single color I've used on here. And if I did it right, or my idea of right for me, I will have it nicely blended to where it actually pretty much resembles a tree stump. And I can see it now. I don't think you can probably see it on the camera, but I can see that I'm getting a nice blend of all of my colors. I can see all of them in this. Some areas of them are very small, some aren't, but I tell you what, it's all shaping up to give it a really neat overall look. See right here, I've got some white that I didn't paint. This isn't going to matter because my door frame and whatever I add to it is going to be in there anyway, so you're not even going to know. You'll never see it when I'm done. I'm just kind of going around. I don't even know if I've been all the way around. I think I have. Anyway, I'm going to leave it like this for tonight, and I'll check it in the morning, or, well, I got to work tomorrow, but I'll check it at some point tomorrow, probably when I get home, and I will decide what I think of the color then. But for now, I am done with painting, and if my paint job looks good to me in the morning, because my light is really weird in here tonight. I don't know what's with that. Usually it's nice and bright, but it's just not looking that way. I will check it in the morning, see what I think, touch up whatever I feel needs to be touched up, and tomorrow, if I get around to doing a video, it may be a few days, guys, because I do have to work. I have Easter off, yay, but I'm working my Saturday that I'm supposed to have off again. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to leave that. And I'm going to check it in the morning and see what I think. And if I need to touch it up, I'll do that before we get back together. And next we'll be putting the cardboard on the roof. And what I did for the inside was I just cut a circle of cardboard. I'm going to be painting all this black, but I didn't think you wanted to watch me paint it black. So I just cut it out so that the jar lid, you know, is up in here, and it is recessed. That's why I left the top of my wood down just a little bit. And it does go on, and it does fit, but you got to be really careful because if you get too much in between there, your lid's not going to fit. But this one does. So I will see you next time when we do the roof. Till then, have a great week. Bye-bye.